Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the World Cyber Games 2013 Game Festival in China. This is going to be the second set, spawning in the bottom right-hand position as the red Protoss hailing from China. His name is Jim, and his opposition in the bottom left-hand position as the blue Zerg from America. It's Evil Genius's Suppy. And it already seems like Jim would like to open with a Forge Expand build. Slightly different than the Gateway opening, which we saw last game. And the map is, of course, Whirlwind. Along a map that's been around in the ladder and competitive circuit for quite a long time. I'd say almost a year at this point. It's a veteran map. It's produced a lot of amazing macro games. And, you know, when it comes to PvZ, the third base for Protoss, as long as they secure it, then generally they're pretty happy and they can move on easily from there. But, you know, it has two somewhat wide entrances, so they need to have good SimCity in order to defend against Zerg aggression should they try to attack that third base with the timing. Jim sending out his second probe. He wants to make sure that he scouts his opponent on time and no early pool shenanigans are able to deal a lot of damage to his economy, because if Suppy is going for an early pool play, that means that Jim's going to be ill-prepared for the attack if he scouts very late with his last probe. And now he's going to go ahead and send his second probe, most likely back to base, unless he wants to try something really tricky. With Jim adding the Nexus into the natural, that does not seem to be the case. Suppy just opening very safe. He went for the pool, then he decided to put down his hatchery. He's not getting any gas, which he doesn't need if it's a Forge expansion as well. And Jim will just go ahead, work on the wall, add his natural, adding a gateway on eventually. And then he'll complete that wall with the cybernetics core, and his Zealot can just kind of snug right in between that core and pylon. So in game number one, Jim went for a two-base Immortal timing attack all-in, definitely the parting style play, and it worked very well against the American player Suppy. He has the option to go ahead and do that this game as well, or he can go for more of a macro-based play. Really, you know, Jim, he has a lot of different options, and Suppy, it's just going to be up to him to kind of, I feel like he's the one that's going to be playing more reactionary than Jim. With game number one, Jim essentially dictated the pace of the game. Jim's got the gas added into his army, his economy. And what will be really the tech that Jim moves into next is going to be indicative of what kind of play style he wants to go for this game. If he adds the Stargate, there's a good chance it's just going to be more of a standard macro game. But if he adds the Robo once again, then we could be seeing a similar game to the first one, where Jim just rolled over Suppy with Immortals, Sentries, and Suppy couldn't really handle the pressure. But the Stargate's going down, and that leads me to think that we'll move into more of a standard macro game, at least from Jim's end. Suppy, he loves to play his macro games. He's overall a pretty solid and consistent player. And with the addition of the third hatchery, there doesn't seem to be too much early aggression coming from his end. Still droning up hard, still really just focusing on that economy. Oh, interesting. So Jim has decided to open with a Void Ray first from the Stargate instead of the normal Phoenix and very occasionally Oracles. This could mean that Jim wants to grab a third expansion, but adding on the Robo behind this is actually really interesting. It's very possible that Jim could try to kind of fake out his opponent by killing off the Overlords with the lone Void Ray and then going for a timing once again but it would be very delayed should he decide to do that attack. And he's building another Void Ray behind this. So Jim, there's a good chance he wants to just move into that macro game, kill off the Overlord so they can't do too much scouting. And adding on 3 additional gateways. So, interesting from Jim. Very interesting. I'm curious to see how this plays out. Don't forget that Suppy does not know about the Robo. He only knows about the Void Rays. And he's making a Warp Prism behind this. Warp Gate is about to complete. He's going to have 3 additional gateways as well. So the timing is going to line up where Jim can actually drop Suppy's main or natural or third base. And he can also use the Void Rays for support. Suppy, realizing the threat of the Void Rays, adds on a few Spore Crawlers. And also making an Infestation Pit, going for the melee upgrades. So this leads me to believe that Suppy is going to go for a very Ling-heavy and to Infestor into Ultralisk composition. And Jim, he's got the 2 Void Rays. Wants to move around the map. This is going to be a little bit scary for Jim. The Zerglings should be able to pick off most of the Zealots one by one. But oh, hold on a second. Jim, he actually had sentries in the Warp Prism. So that means he's going to easily wall off and prevent any type of units coming from the natural third from Suppy, as long as he has sentries for energy. And with the Void Rays charged up, they're able to easily take out the Queens. The Zealots can wreak havoc in the main base. This is just not looking so good for Suppy as long as Jim keeps those sentries alive and force fields that ramp. And he should be able to easily clean up anything in that main base. But the force fields, they're not able to continue, and he's letting in the floodgate of Zerglings. And with the full surround on the Zealots, that's going to be able to repel the attack from Jim. Suppy defends, but he did lose a lot of drones in this attack. The last of the Zerglings will clean up the Zealots. The 2 Void Rays are able to survive. And Suppy also knows that Jim does not have a 3rd expansion. This is actually pretty important for Suppy because even though he lost some drones at the natural, he's still up a base. He's getting infestors. His 1-1 is just about to complete. And he's moving into the Hive Tech along with the Overseer scouting the Robotics Bay. This is going to allow him to know exactly what kind of tech his opponent's going for. The army is still looking decently strong from Jim. He has the Warp Prism. He has a strong amount of units. A nice overall mix, actually, with a lot of different tech. And, ooh, walling in Jim. I think he's going to go for another 2-base all-in, but this time I feel Suppy, he has a lot of drones. All right, Suppy knows exactly what's going on. He's making a lot of Spine Crawlers to help defend against this attack. He has Infestors. He has a ridiculous amount of Zerglings with solid upgrades. He also has Queens for defense, so I'm not really sure if this attack from Jim is going to be as effective as it was in Game 1. Suppy is looking much more prepared for the aggression coming from his opponent. And the Fungals move off, hitting a ridiculous amount of Protoss units as long... Oh! Okay, Jim, very smart, realizes there's no way that attack will work. Decides to just back up, recall out. And Jim, he has an additional Colossi. He has the Warp Prism that he can use to harass in the main base. But Suppy now, he's getting the Ultralisk Cavern. His +2 attack is halfway done. He's killing off these additional pylons quite easily. Well, it looks like that pylon will finish. Suppy is, still needs to be a little bit careful against this Protoss army. There's going to be a ridiculous amount of Zealots in the army. There's still the air support, a single Immortal, a few sentries from behind, and the Colossi dealing damage. But now, the addition of Spine Crawlers, a lot of Infestors. This is going to be pretty hard for Jim to break. Can he do it? He's going to attempt the attack. This is all or nothing for the Protoss player. If he can actually bolster through this force, then he should be able to take out Suppy to the 0. And you know what? I think he may actually do it. The Colossi are still alive. The Zerglings coming from behind, but can they take out any of the Colossi? It doesn't look like it. And Jim, is he going to do it? Can he break through Suppy's army somehow, some way? It's going to be a very close game regardless. The Infestors, though, they're energy. One Colossus falls, but a bulk of Protoss forces are still alive. The Warp Prism is still able to reinforce Zealots, and Suppy, he has a ridiculous amount of money in the bank. He's making Zerglings. He has the Ultralisk tech, but where are the Ultralisks? There's 3 in production, but can they come out in time for this attack and help defend? Well, Suppy, he's going to lose his Evolution Chambers. He has 2-1 on his army, but there's still a large backbone to this Protoss army. 6 Ultralisks in production. He needs those all out in order to deal with the force fields, the ridiculous amount of Zealots, and of course the Immortal and Colossi if he wants to defend. Once the Ultralisks are out, that will really be the true test to see if he can kind of come back into the game. The real issue is Suppy, he's lost his 3rd base. He's lost a lot of economy. The Protoss player's still on 2 base. Suppy, he needs to regroup. He has to attack from 2 sides, but there's 3 Colossi total. Here comes Suppy. This is going to be the last attack from him. Are there enough Ultralisks to defend against Jim's attack? The Zealots, they're absolutely getting demolished by these Ultras, and now Jim completely surrounded. There's no anti-air. However, the deal with the Void Rays, so even if the Ultras can clean up this army, Suppy, he needs something to deal with the Void Rays. The Colossi, they're starting to fall. 3 left. Is there enough Ultras to kill off the rest of them? No! It does not look like that. Jim is able to just scratch out just a few units to deal with the Ultras, and Suppy, he's really on his last 2 legs here. He's able to kill off 2 more Colossi with the Force. Additional Ultralisks on the way, Queens and Overseer. But is it going to really be enough? It just seems like every single fight, Jim has just a few too many units to push over Suppy, and with the natural falling, with no 3rd base, Suppy's running out of economy. Jim, it's looking like his 2 base timings are simply too much for the EG player from America. Suppy has the tech, but he doesn't have the economy. Even pulling drones off the mineral line, doing his best to try to make one last stand. But all for nothing. GG is called.